Hello. Are we ready? Are we ready? Okay. Good morning. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Glad to see you here again now that we're resuming activities after the pandemic. My name is Tony Payan. I am the director of the Center for the United States and Mexico at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today, as usual. Thank you for attending. Over the course of the next 2 years, we will be unfolding at the center a new initiative that includes a series of activities. The initiative is titled Mexico 2025 and Beyond. Among these activities, we have launched a lecture series designed to invite some of the most distinguished political, civil society, business, and media personalities in Mexico and the United States to discuss the future of Mexico and the binational relationship. We have indeed, for the last 4 years, focused on everything that has gone right or wrong, and there are heated debates on all of this on both sides of the border. We've been, so to speak, in a reactive mood on both sides, by the way. You may remember the Trump administration, which ended in the United States and all the controversies it brought, not just within the United States, but also to the binational relationship. And the López Obrador administration is now on the countdown to its last 2 years. It will be over on September 30th, 2024, just about less than 2 years from today. So we thought that it's time to focus on the future, the post-López Obradorismo. So I know that we face many challenges and we got 2 years to go. We speak of many of these challenges every day on the economy, inflation, trade disputes, the lack of public safety and security, poor binational cooperation, irregular migration, the state of democracy in Mexico, the weakness of institutions and the rule of law, and on and on. And we talk about that every single day. But I want to suggest that we are faced with something much greater and much deeper, something which the Germans might refer to as Zeitgeist, a spirit of the times. Challenges much profounder than the everyday issues that we discuss at our dinner tables, at our kitchens. And in such sometimes difficult times when such spirits run loose, we need to focus on what really matters: democracy, liberty, inclusive growth, prosperity, and a healthy planet for all of us to live, and of course here on a healthy binational relationship. So, even if our days are sometimes consumed by the day-to-day trudge, by putting out fires, by reacting to this or that, we need to raise our heads above the water every once in a while and look up to the sun and ensure that what really matters is not lost in our pettier, smaller day-to-day disagreements. And so these conversations within the Mexico 2025 and Beyond lecture series are designed to do just that. We're challenging our guests to think 2025 and beyond. And so in this second installment of this speaker series, we have the honor to receive Leo Zuckermann. Leo Zuckermann is the host of the TV show Es la hora de opinar on Foro TV. Since 2010, the show has been the prime nightly political debate show in Mexico, where Leo and his guests discuss international trends and national problems and debate arguments and ideas. He's also a panelist on the television program Tercer Grado on Televisa and a radio political commentator for Grupo Fórmulas, José Cárdenas Informa. Zuckermann also writes the column Juegos del Poder in Excelsior, one of Mexico's major newspapers. Previously, Zuckermann worked at the Office of the President of Mexico and for the consulting firm McKinsey & Company. He also served as the Secretary General of the Centro de Investigación y Docencia Económica, CIDE. Zuckermann has been named one of the top 300 leaders in Mexico by the magazine Líderes Mexicanos for his role as a political analyst. In 2007, he was awarded the José Pagés Yargo National Journalism Award for Best Future Article. Indeed, quite pertinent to what we are trying to do here today. Zuckermann holds a degree in public administration from El Colegio de Mexico and a master's degree in public policy from the University of Oxford in England. And he has 2 master's degrees from Columbia University in New York. And he is, well, without further ado, what I want to do is welcome Leo Zuckermann today to share his vision for the year 2025 and beyond with us, and then to engage with you in conversation. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Leo Zuckermann. Leo.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tony. And thank you to Baker Institute for having the opportunity to talk with you today. I am going to talk about democracy in Mexico. The question, is democracy in Mexico at risk? I was very optimistic in a conversation with you about the Mexican economy. Now it's time to be pessimistic about the politics of Mexico. So, So is democracy at risk in Mexico? And the short answer is yes. So now we can leave. Thank you very much. And the thing is why? Why democracy is at risk in Mexico? And you, Tony, talk about the zeitgeist, the spirit of the time. And it's the spirit of the times also in all the countries of the world. We have problems with democracies. I don't have to tell you, here in the United States about how democracy in America is also having its own problems. Well, it's the same in Mexico, with one difference. America has been, the United States has been a democracy for more than 200 years. Mexico is still a very young democracy. We started to be a democracy, I would say, maybe in 1997, when the president lost the majority in Congress for first time in 70 years. Or maybe in 2000, when President Fox from the opposition won the election. We can say that maybe Mexican democracy has 20, 25 years of existence. We are still in an ongoing consolidation process. If you see the index of democracy that the Economist Intelligence Unit calculates every year, Mexico is in a poor situation. I mean, we are not one of the best democracies of the region of Latin America. As we are starting with this game of democracy when there is problems of democracy all over the world. So what are the risks that I see in the Mexican democracy? What are we facing? The first one, and I am very concerned about this, is the growing militarization of public life. Let me tell you, it was President Calderon in 2007 that decided to involve the armed forces in this issue of public security. Actually, it's a paradox, because it was the most peaceful time that we had in 2007. But President Calderon said, we are going to go to a war against organized crime. And we need to involve the armed forces in this war against organized crime. And what we have seen is that since 2007, the amount of military personnel deployed for security tasks has been increasing, has been doubled. Some of the numbers actually say that have tripled. It's not very clear, actually, how many soldiers and Marines are involved in this security, but the fact is that there are more and more military patrolling the streets of Mexico. And the bet of López Obrador for trying to resolve this violence is what he called, or what we are now calling, the National Guard. The National Guard, which is a military arm of the Ministry of Defense. It's, as you can see, 77% of the National Guards are members of the military, and only 23% are personnel that was transferred from the federal police. No? So basically, it's a military unit, the members of the National Guard. Now, the thing is, you would say, okay, maybe it's a good idea to involve the militaries in public security, but the thing is that the results are not there. No, it has been a failure actually. No, as you can see, the troops involved in public security have been increased, but also the homicides in the country have been increasing. So I don't see why we keep doing this same thing of militarizing the public security if we still have a lot of homicides in Mexico. Now, let me give you this. This is an incredible number because the National Guard has not worked to stop the most dangerous criminals. As I told you, there are around 36,000 homicides in Mexico every year. 36,000, more than 36,000 every year. You know how many people, how many alleged criminals the National Guard arrested and they went to the prosecutors to be prosecutors in 2020? 16. 36,000 homicides, and the National Guard just arrested 16. Kidnapping, 9 persons. We have a terrible problem of kidnappings, and the National Guard just arrested 9 persons. Extortion. There are many territories in Mexico where you have to pay to the organized crime in order to operate your business. How many cases of extortions the National Guard went to the prosecution? 5. So I don't understand why we have the military doing this job. They are not succeeding. They are failing, actually. Actually, they have more arrests for misdemeanors than for real crimes, for serious crimes. In 2020, they arrested 97 people for injuring anyone, for fights, in the streets, 97, but 16 for homicides. No? So basically, what the National Guard has become is a migration police that serves more the interest of the United States. In 2020, they arrested around 5,000, 6,000 people for migration. This is people from Central America that are trying to cross the territory of Mexico to come to the United States. Even children, they arrested them. So basically, the National Guard has become a police for migration, no? And of course, a national transit police, no? They report that they have done 207 million patrolling in the country, no? I mean, in the highways of the countries. Very important, because they succeeded in convincing 124,000 people to use their seatbelt. No. So I really don't understand all this talk about the militarization, where the National Guard is not doing the job of bringing the criminals to the justice system. So what is very clear, this is not working. It's because we are giving a lot of money to the military. They have been gaining more and more millions of pesos for the budget every year. But the problem here is that if you see the budget, they are not giving money to the prosecutors, to the district attorneys, no? So you are giving the money to the militaries, but you are not giving money to prosecute the criminals with the district attorneys. That money has not gone up in Mexico. Actually, it has gone down by 14% in the last years, whereas the increase of the budget for the military and in the National Guard has been increasing every year. And of course, this model, President López Obrador says it's a success model. It is not a success model, it's a failure. But now the Senate just passed this week an amendment for the Constitution to have the military forces, the armed forces, until 2028 in the streets doing public security tasks. So we are going to keep going with the military for at least 6 years until 2028. Now, the problem is that this extension of the military is not only going to public security. They are giving more and more tasks of the civil government to the militaries. In the last 10 years, the federal and local governments have assigned at least 246 civil tasks to the armed forces, 134 to the national level, at the national level, and 109 at the local level. What are those? I'm going to give you some examples. I'm sorry. You are going to have fun here with this. Examples of what they have that the armed forces are now executing. First, they built the new airport of Mexico City, the Aeropuerto Internacional Felipe Ángeles. They are building some parts of the Mayan train in the Yucatan Peninsula. They are building 2,700 branches, offices of the new bank, Banco del Bienestar, where where people that receive money from the government for the social programs, they get the money from this Banco del Bienestar, who are building these branches, the military. They are managing the airports in Chetumal, Quintana Roo, y Palenque, Chiapas. They are building also the new airport in Tulum. They are remodeling 32 hospitals. They were supporting the medical attentions of COVID-19. They were moving all the vaccines for the COVID-19. They are fighting the oil theft, the gasoline theft, we call that huachicol. They are guarding the north and south borders for migratory controls, as I told you. They are building the barracks for the National Guard. They are delivering the textbooks, very important. They are supporting the Sembrando Vida program. This is a program of the federal government where you receive money if you how do you say, put some arbolitos, no? Yeah, exactly. So they are actually having the trees. I mean, they distribute the trees to the people to how to say, sembrar? To plant these arbolitos, these trees, no? They are now, the Navy is managing the Mexico City airport. In case you have any problems with the Mexico City program, you can go to the Navy to report that problem. They are guarding the delivery of funds for social programs. They are cleaning the sargazo in Quintana Roo. I don't know, how do you say sargazo? I didn't know. It's sargazo, no? Yeah. Seaweed, exact, seaweed. They are distributing the medicines of the whole public sector. They are the custody of Pemex pipe trucks. They are managing all the maritime, how do you say, maritime, exactly, ports, all the ports of Mexico, Veracruz, Manzanillo, all the ports, they are managing the ports. They are also in charge of all the customs of Mexico, all the customs in Mexico. They, of course, very important, they take care of the beaches during the tourist season. They are guarding people of public interest and political actors. No, they are bodyguards. They are details. No, they are tracing fugitives, and they are operating also the safe returns to the schools for the kids. No, very important task of the military in Mexico. Some of them, of course, they are a joke, but some of them, they are very important. They are becoming builders, construction company. They are managing the ports. They are managing the airports. They are managing the customs. They are very much involved in tasks that used to be for civil people. And now, the last thing we hear about is that they are thinking in running a military, a commercial airline. No? They are going to have, of course, if you are building and managing an airport, next step, you set up your own airline. Next, we're going to have hotels and restaurants and all of that, no? So the thing is that in this sexenio, in this term of office of President López Obrador, there has been many amendments in the laws to give them legal powers to the armed forces. They are now have more and more power than ever in the recent history of Mexico. And of course, they have received a lot of money. And you know that money is power. And you can see how this sexenio, this term in office, the armed forces have received more and more cash from the taxpayers. And this is the story of Sedena, which is the Ministry of Defense. This has been the story of the Navy, no, of the Secretaría de Marina, and this has been also the story of the National Guard. Now, all of this has empowered a lot the military forces. And the problem here is that the military forces are now more invested with this government, no? And they are playing politics, no? You can watch General Luis Crescencio Sandoval, who is the Minister of Defense, of National Defense, in a speech he gave in last year. He said, the armed forces and National Guard see in the ongoing transformation that our country is living the same purpose as in the three first transformations, the good of the country. It focuses on casting out corruptions, procuring the well-being of the people, progress with justice, equality, economic growth, education, health, and security, among others. As Mexicans, it is necessary to be united in this project. This project is the project of President López Obrador, no? And what this general is saying, we have to be united with the project of this president. It is an honor to be able to contribute to the transformation that we are living in. The bases are set and we advance on steady pace on the nation project that has happened. It's an absolute support for the project of President López Obrador. And the armed forces has to be above any political, any partisan interest. They are not, they are playing politics, and that concerns me. So the second risk that is facing the Mexican democracy is the involvement of the organized crime in elections. As you know, there are the presence of the cartels of the organized crimes is practically in all Mexico's territory. In some of them is the Cartel Sinaloa, the guys from Sinaloa. In other parts is Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. And in some of the states of Mexico, there are presence of both of the main cartels. Now, it's the main cartels, but they operate with local with local gangs and local organized groups that they have in each state. Now, the problem is that there is more and more violence during campaigns and elections. Between 2017 and 2018, there were 152 politicians that were killed during the electoral process, and between 2020 and 2021, 107. As candidates, 48 of these candidates were killed in 2017 and 2018, and 36 between 2020 and 2021. No? Candidates and politicians are being killed during elections. Now, the thing is that these murders have consequences. In 64% of the cases where there was a victim of a candidate, the opposition won this election, meaning that they killed the guy, no, and the other guy, won the election. So it seems that it was very efficient, that killing, no, for political purposes. Just 36% of the cases, the party of the victim won the city council election. Now, the beneficiaries of the murder of candidates is Morena, 8. No number of municipalities where murder aspirants or candidates for city councils were registered by party that obtained electoral victories. 8 were from Morena, 7 from PAN, 5 from Movimiento Ciudadano, 4 from PRI, 3 from El Verde, and 1 from Unidad Ciudadana, which means that basically all the parties, so they are equal party opportunities, here for these murders, no. Now, we also know that there is a lot of suspicion that many of the candidates are being involved with organized crime. There is a lot of evidence that the current governor of Sinaloa has many ties with the cartel de Sinaloa, and also the governor of San Luis Potosí, El Pollito Ricardo Gallardo. We know, this is not a rumor, we know he was in jail actually because of organized crime. He is the leader of the organized crime in San Luis Potosí. He was left free because of due process. I mean, there was a problem with the due process, and the judge freed him, and he ran for governor, and he won the governorship of San Luis Potosí. So the thing is that what we have seen, it's a very interesting thing in Mexico, because organized crime, just like in the US, just like in Japan, just like in all other countries of the world, they enter politics in order to have police and political protection. But now in Mexico, what they have found is that it's a great business to have the control of all the government, not only to have the protection of the police. It's a good business to have the control of the government. And there are many examples about this. Let me just give you one example. In Morelos, in the state of Morelos, organized crime controls the potable water authority, no? And what they do is they closed the pipelines of the potable water. So there are towns that they ran out of water, no? And what happened next is that suddenly, surprisingly, there are these trucks with potable waters to sell the potable water to the people. Now, who organized that? Well, these gangs that actually controls the potable water authority. No, that's one of the examples. No, the other example is they control the property register in the county, so they know who has property, and they proceed to kidnap and extortion that people because they have this information. So it's a terrible thing what's happening. They know that they now want to control not only the police, but they want to control the whole government because it's good business for them. Third risk that the Mexican democracy is facing is the murder of journalists. As you know, we have an epidemic of violence. As I told you, right now we have more than 36,000 killings, homicides at the national levels, and some of them are journalists. Actually, Mexico is the country with most journalist assassinations in the world. Mexico in 2021, we had nine journalists were killed in that year. It's even worse than Afghanistan. Afghanistan has only 7. No, we had 9, and of course this is a problem for the Mexican democracy because some of my colleagues are being killed. They don't want to report, especially all these stories about organized crime and the relations of organized crime with the governments, with the local government. So they have, they don't want to report that because they are threatened by the organized crime. No, now some people say, listen, in a country where there are many killings, to have journalists killed is part of the, of the statistics. No. There are also medics, there are also physicians, there are also academics, there are also, there are many people. Well, you have the journalists, they have their quota for killing, no? So it's part of the statistics of a country where you have an epidemic of violence. What we know exactly is that they are killing the journalists because they have been reporting this association between the organized crime and governments. And last but not least, I am concerned in Mexico about the illegal practices and polarization heading to the next presidential election. What we have seen this year is that the government does not mind breaking the law as long as they win. This, for example, I think the Mexican law is a very stupid law because they forbidden to campaign. No, it's a very stupid regulation, but it's the law of the land, and they don't respect the law of the land. And what we have seen this April, when López Obrador had a referendum whether he was going to stay or leave office, what we saw is that in all Mexico there was this propaganda that was illegal, and they didn't mind to do these illegal acts because they wanted to win. Actually, one of the possible candidates for 2024, the mayor of Mexico City, Claudia Sheinbaum, is already advertising herself throughout the country. No, if you travel to Mexico, you are going to see these announcements, these incredible, how do you say, anuncios espectaculares? Billboards, exactly, billboards. These big billboards all over Mexico City announcing that Claudia Sheinbaum, what they do is incredible, is that they appear in the cover of a magazine that no one reads, no? And they say, Claudia Sheinbaum baja la delincuencia 58%, and this, I tell you, this magazine, it's a non-existent magazine, Mundo Ejecutivo, no? But they are saying, they are advertising, supposedly they are advertising the magazine, but in reality what they are advertising is the person in the cover, which is Claudia Sheinbaum, no? So this is illegal, no? And again, as I told you, they are doing these illegal things, and what is going to happen is this is going to have a lot of stress and a lot of confrontation with the electoral authorities. In fact, the INE, which is the National Electoral Institute, is always stopping Morena to stop this proselytism, to stop this advertising, these campaigns. And what is going to happen is whether they win or lose in 2024, this will lead to a very important confrontation between the government and the electoral authorities. And that is going to be a problem for the Mexican democracy. And last but not least, as a good populist, López Obrador, what do is he is always polarizing the country. No, this is the story of good against bad, of heroes against traitors. For example, in the last votes of the electrical amendment of the Constitution, the parties that voted against this amendment, they were called traitors of the fatherland, no? Which is a terrible thing to say, because you voted against a bill, you are suddenly you are a traitor. But this is part of the polarization. It's textbook for populists to say this is a fight between good and evil, between bad and good, no? And in a violent country, as we have seen, to have this kind of polarization is very, very risky, no? As I told you, there are many candidates, many politicians that have been killed in Mexico, and to have this polarization, I think it's not a good idea, and it's terrible for the democratic regime of Mexico. So these are the four factors that are putting the Mexican democracy at risk: the militarization, organized crime, the murder of journalists, and the illegal practices and polarizations heading to the next elections. And that's it. So we can have a conversation now. Tony, thank you.
There's some water for you. Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then we'll open it to a conversation with all of us, the entire audience. There's been some videos on TV about the National Guard, and it was quite interesting that you mentioned that they are patrolling the highways because increasingly there's cell phones everywhere. And there's a number of videos that have shown up where they literally extort money from people in the highways, and they're taking money from people and they're asking people to pay them off.
What a surprise!
Yeah. So to me, the question here is, what is the cost for the military? I mean, we saw what you said about Crescencio Sandoval, right? The Secretary of Defense. But at the end of the day, if corruption is associated with them, if human rights violations are associated with them, and they're responsible for so many tasks, and all this is failing, there's going to be a price to pay in their image, their reputation, and their support. And the military used to be one of the most or best trusted institutions in Mexico. So how is that going to play out with the military? I mean, do they know the risk that they're assuming in a very difficult environment where they themselves will be seen as responsible for failure in the future?
Well, first of all, according to the polls, the militaries are very popular. You are right; it's one of the most trusted institutions of the country. People want them in the streets, patrolling and doing police work, and this is logical because there are no police in some parts of Mexico, no? So if you don't have police and you see the bad guys, the organized crime, well, you say, bring the army, bring the navy, no? We want someone to protect us, no? Now, as you mentioned, and you are right, the risk of doing this is that there is going to be an erosion, I would say, of the public image of the army. What we know from some sources is that the militaries are divided in what to do with these issues of public security. Some of them, they say, it's not our job to do this, and we are going to pay a price for doing this. Some of them, they say, well, we have to rescue la patria, no? Right. We have to rescue the country, and we have to do our job, and we are following the orders of our commander-in-chief, which is the president, and we have to do this. Now, in all of this discussion, there is a lot of money involved, no? So they are gaining a lot of money. There are many businesses, and I am concerned about that because it's very easy to bring the militaries to do all of these things that I told you, but now tell them to go out, no, and to renounce to all of these resources. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a terrible challenge for the next president to say, that's it, you know. You don't have to manage airports or customs and all of that. And by the way, I have to tell you also this. For the regular Marines or soldiers that are there, it's not an easy task, no? I was yesterday in Mexico City airport, and I was passing security, and I saw this Marine who was watching, you know, all what's happening with security, you know. And I said, you know, this guy, he entered the Navy because he wanted to go, I don't know, to Singapore and go in, you know, in a vessel and have fun and, you know, and combat the bad guys in the sea, no? And here he is, you know, watching the people, you know, if they bring in shampoos or, you know, it's terrible, no? I mean, I don't see, I mean, it's not the same. You don't go to the army or to the Navy because you want to be police or because you want to manage security in an airport, no? So I think that is going to have also a cost in with this policy, no?
I have a another question about the military. Every time you bring in an agency like the military to do certain tasks, you're not in any urgency to build the institutions that you do need to be building.
That's exactly.
So there's a moral hazard, right? I mean, if the military can vaccinate, why build a vaccination system? If the military can build the airports, why build or why involve companies that actually know how to build airports? If the military can clean up the sargassum on the beaches, why create the institutions, the environmental institutions that do that? So at the end of the day, we're going to be left with a very thin administrative apparatus in the state, and the institutions will simply not be there when this all fails.
Absolutely, absolutely. And let me tell you, for building the airport, there are many building companies in Mexico. I mean, we still have that kind of capacity, no? But public security is especially the case for moral hazard, because they say, okay, we are going to build the police, no, at the county level, at the state level, and meanwhile we are going to use the armed forces, okay? And that is going to, and they amended the constitution to say we are going to do this until 2024. Now we are almost there in 2024, and the president said, sorry, we didn't have the police, we didn't build these capacities, these police capacities, so they have to stay until 2028, okay? And they just passed this constitutional amendment. Now, in 2028, I bet you they're going to come and they say, sorry, we don't have the institutions, we don't have the police, we need for them to stay until 2035. I don't know, no? So, and we're going to keep going with this system, which, by the way, as I told you, it's a failure because we don't see the results, good results for this militarization. So, for me, that's exactly right. I mean, you are not doing what you need to do as a state to build these institutions, no? And you are relying more and more on the military, and in the end, you are going to have a military state. We know, for example, from Egypt and from Pakistan, where the militaries, they produce part of the GDP, no? that the militaries are the ones that are running those countries, because they have a lot, involved in the game. No, I mean, they have a lot is at stake. No.
Mm-hmm. I have a question about organized crime, because I think yesterday I was at the University of Texas at Austin giving a talk on some of these issues on organized crime in Mexico. And I think one of the things that I see is the crime itself in Mexico has changed. Some academics estimate that there may be as many as 340 different cells operating in cities, roads, highways, sectors, colonias or sectors in particular large cities, and engaged in a number of activities. When you have large organizations and you knock out the main guy, the capo, so to speak, you may actually weaken the organization,
yes,
or they may enter into chaos, and this is what we saw under the Calderon administration. But when you have these new cartels operating more as networks,
yeah,
they're more resilient. They're harder to fight because you can pick a cell, pick a guy,
yeah,
and it doesn't really matter. It's not going to affect the whole network structure of crime. So where are we now in terms of their ability to build a base, co-opt specific places, and the state itself being able to dislodge crime at a larger scale from this kind of presence that they have in Mexico today?
No, absolutely. I mean, when Calderon started to use the military for public security, basically we had two cartels: Sinaloa, or the Pacific, and the Gulf, which was Tamaulipas. No, and the main business of these cartels was to traffic drugs to the United States. I mean, basically that was the business. Very successful, by the way, because there is a lot of demand in this country. No? So when there is demand, there is supply. So anyway, but this changed radically these years, because now, as you mentioned, first of all, the cartel del Golfo disappeared, and there is a new one, Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación, which is more violent, by the way. And now, as you said, there is a network of gangs, of very small groups that are protected by these two cartels. And they changed the business model. No, they are not just trafficking drugs to the United States, but they are what we say controlar la plaza. No, they are controlling the territory, and they are doing all these businesses like extortion. No, there are many towns where you cannot operate a business without giving them some part of your money, no? And in order to fight that, it's more difficult, much more difficult. And the National Guard, by the way, is not going to solve that. I mean, you need local polices that can resolve that. So basically, yes, they have changed the structure, and they have changed the business. And now it's much more difficult to face them. Now, there are cases, and I have to tell you, success stories, where they actually changed that, like in Coahuila, with a very strong state police. They changed that. For a time, they did so also in Nuevo León and also in Tijuana. And by the way, in Mexico City, you don't have that problem because we have a very strong police. No, so basically, that's my point. I mean, you need local state polices that are strong in order to fight this new kind of crime with this new structure. No?
I want you to clarify something for me. And the president has implemented a strategy which he calls abrazos no balazos, right? Hugs, not bullets. I can understand, saying we're not going to fight firepower with firepower. So I can understand the no balazos part.
Yeah.
But why the abrazos? That seems to me more like a welcome component to it. Like we're going to hug you, we're going to protect you, we're not going to bother you. So it's a more kind of a generous approach to criminals. So it seems to me that in the phrase abrazos no balazos, there's two different components. The second I can understand, given Mexico's experience, but the first, abrazos, what is that about?
Well, abrazos no balazos is a nice slogan.
Right.
It's a soundbite. He is very good in soundbites, the President López Obrador. And it's not that they are hugging the criminals.
Right. But they're not confronting them, that's the point.
No, exactly right. It's not, it's not abrazos, it's not hugs, and it's not bullets. Here the problem is impunity. Mm-hmm. Here the problem is you have to prosecute them. Mm-hmm. No? By the way, you have to protect their civil rights, their human rights, of course, but you have to prosecute them. And that's exactly what we are not doing. The rate of impunity in Mexico is absolutely unbelievable. I just have, by the way, yesterday I had Edna Jaime from Mexico Evalúa, this NGO which every year evaluates the criminal system. You know, for 100 homicides that there are in Mexico, how many do you think are processed by the criminal justice? 3. Oh, come on. Raúl, please. No, not 2, 3. So the rate of impunity is 97%. Yeah. For homicides. I mean, it's almost 100% for extortions. It's almost 100% for kidnapping. No? Of course, they are patrolling the highways. That's very important, and the belts and all of that. No? So you see, I mean, these are political propaganda of the president, balazos, no balazos. I mean, the real thing, and we know this since Calderón, is that you have to have a strong, the whole chain of the criminal system, which is you need to have very strong and efficient police, strong and efficient prosecutors, strong and efficient judges, and very good jails also. Mm-hmm. No? I mean, that's the whole criminal system. I mean, the law and order system. What we are doing is we are just focusing on police. And you are not focusing on the other side, on the other institutions. And with that, you are never going to fight crime. Yeah. No?
Two more questions. One is related to the state of the opposition in Mexico.
Yeah.
Because you also talked about politics and democracy. There is an opposition in Mexico. I mean, I think that people often say, "Where is the opposition?" And I see Twitter in the Twitter sphere. People talking about where's the opposition. The opposition is there. It may be fragmented, but it's there. In fact, if you think about the numbers, the total numbers in 2018, it was 53 to 47, and in 21 it was 52 for the opposition and 48 for the president, which also makes me think about congressional representation in the way it's set, because the president's coalition got 48%, and yet they enjoy a very comfortable majority, 50% plus.
It's first past the post. No?
So it's clearly something with the formula there, right?
Yes.
But leaving that aside, I mean, at the end of the day, the president has also lost the middle class, and so what is the political landscape like right now in terms of the political parties? Where are we going into 2024, especially because we want to talk about the future? Do they stand a chance? What's the formula that they need to get to be competitive in 2024, given especially the discipline of the president's coalition, Morena, which is about 38%, and then the other two parties that accompany them, PT and Verde, which also add each 5-6%. So they get to that 47-48%. What do you see in terms of 2024?
There is opposition in Mexico. There is no doubt about that. I mean, and I would say sometimes, and in some states, they are they have higher percentage of votes than Morena and the other allies. I mean, of course, there is opposition in Mexico. The problem is that the opposition is divided, no? And when you have a divided opposition, there is no way that you can win that, no? I mean, we have been talking for a lot of time about the necessity in Mexico of a second round of a runoff election, of a ballotage, no? Just like you have in Brazil right now with Lula and Bolsonaro. In most of Latin American countries, you have a runoff election. Actually, I would argue that the United States is kind of a runoff election. I mean, you have first round with the primaries, no, for the two big parties, and then you have the confrontation between the two parties. In Mexico, that's a problem. I mean, we don't have a runoff election, and this means that it's just one election, and the candidate can win with 37% of the votes. We have had that with Calderón. I think it was 36 actually percent of the votes that Calderón won. So because you don't have that, then the opposition is divided, and what López Obrador is trying to do successfully is to divide the opposition. So they can go divided, and the candidate of López Obrador of Morena can win the election in 2024.
With less than 50%?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. No, you can win. I mean, we have had cases in local elections where the candidate wins with 25% of the vote.
Right.
Yeah.
I have an economic question, and then we'll open it to Q&A. The Mexican economy has not been performing very well. In fact, it has not yet recovered the 100% where it was before the pandemic. And certainly investment, public-private investment has been patchy. Sometimes it starts and sometimes it falls, but we're not quite there yet. So it's been 4 lost years. But there is a lot of optimism.
And it's going to be 6.
It's going to be 6. Very likely we'll barely get to 100% of where the economy used to be 4 years ago. But still, there's a lot of optimism. And when I talk to companies in the United States, companies like BP or smaller businesses that want to open operations in Mexico, their question is not should we go or not, but what can you tell us so that we can succeed? So clearly, they're placing their hopes in on the idea that they can go to Mexico and they can succeed. So they just want the advice on security, on infrastructure, on navigating the political environment. So there's a lot of that optimism, and I guess in the long run, I wonder what your idea is and what are the kinds of things that need to happen in Mexico to be able to restore that investment, that confidence, that trust, and get the Mexican economy to grow again. What is the formula there?
Well, as I told you, I am optimistic about the Mexican economy because several reasons. I think the structural conditions of the Mexican economy are very strong. Of course, the most important thing I have to tell you is the integration with the United States. I mean, that has been a story of success. I mean, no doubt whatsoever. I remember when we were bargaining the NAFTA, the original trade agreement in 91, 92, many people in Mexico, some of them are in the government right now, no? By the way, they say, you are crazy. We are never going to be able to compete with the United States and with Canada. I mean, it's going to be a disaster for the country. We're going to lose all of our industry. And that's exactly what, I mean, just the reverse happened, no? I mean, even Trump came and said, you know, we have to rebargain this treaty because Mexico was the winner of this treaty. But anyway, the thing is, I really believe that the structural conditions of the Mexican economy are very strong, and we have all the potentials to be growing very, very fast. Not this sexennium, not this with López Obrador. I think with the next president is going to happen. No, now what would I say to the companies? I mean, well, listen, I have been saying this. I mean, for big companies, I mean, there is no problem in operating in Mexico because they know how to operate in Mexico and Pakistan and Nigeria, and no, I mean, they know how to, no, they have experience in that regard. The problem here is to bring the next tier of companies that are not these big, incredible corporations, no? And that's the challenge for Mexico, I would say, in terms of rule of law, in terms of organized crime, in terms of how to operate in a different environment. And some of them, they have come to Mexico and it has been a success for them, no? I have to tell you, maybe, as I told you, democracy is at risk in Mexico, but companies, they don't care about democracy. I mean, no, I mean, let's be honest.
Large corporations,
no, exactly. I mean, if there is a dictatorship or a democracy...
They value stability even if it is authoritarian stability.
Well, they invest in China, no?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not a democracy, no, let's say. So I have to tell you, I think that maybe the most important issue for middle companies, I would say, and middle can be big, by the way, no, but it's maybe it's a rule of law, no? I mean, how to operate in a country where there are problems of rule of law. But also I have to tell you, I mean, there are gestores. I don't know if you know the word gestores, which is the guy who arranges everything, you know? Yeah. You give him or her the money and they bribe and they do all of the things, no? So it's terrible, but it's what happened in some towns, you know, Ciudad Juárez, no? How many gestores there are in Ciudad Juárez
they take care of business.
It's fixers. I would say
they
fixers.
Do what needs to be done.
Fixers, it's fixers, right. Exactly.
We have time for a few questions here, Raul, and then back to David. Yeah.
You mentioned almost in passing how difficult it is to revert what is happening on the military side of things.
Yes.
And if you think of the past 100 years of Mexican history, one of the constants has been precisely to circumscribe the role of the military.
Absolutely.
Particularly over the past, 76 years since the end of the Avila Camacho administration.
Yes, exactly.
So it's extremely difficult to revert.
Absolutely.
Could you elaborate on that? Because I mean, on the one hand, public opinion is happy that you know, there's a sense of emergency here, and the military could play a very key role in fixing things. But the problem is what happens afterwards.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, if something was different with the PRI during the PRI era, no, it was that it constrained the military to the barracks, and I mean, within the military, the civils, they never went to see what happened, within there with the budgets, and they respected that, no. But they set a limit, a very important limit, of the militaries not doing politics, not being involved in government, and all of that. And that was very important because Mexico never had a military dictator, whereas all these countries, Brazil, Argentina, Chile, they had military coup, and military governments. Mexico didn't have that because the militaries were very constrained by the civil authorities. And that was, I think, one of the secrets of the PRI to remain in power for several years. Now, this president is playing with fire. He's playing with fire. Now, how you are going to reverse it, that's the big question. I mean, how you are going to say to the army, you are not going to build anymore. No. I mean, and in this building, there are many businesses, by the way. No. What's that? It's okay.
I get these warnings about.
Okay. I say, oh my God, on the military.
It's probably Lisa telling you to cut it out.
General Sandoval is calling, you know. So yeah, exactly. He's playing with fire. And let me tell you, there is a high probability of a woman being the next president of Mexico. I'm talking about Claudia Sheinbaum. Maybe she is doing very well in the polls. She has the support of the president, all of that, no? Let's say Claudia Sheinbaum wins the presidency. Do you think that the Mexican military is going to take orders from a woman? I mean, I don't know, even here in the States that would be the case, by the way, I don't know, but no. I'm not going to talk about that. It's your country, no? Your problem, your country, no? No. In Mexico, I know the military. They are not machos. They are misogynistic, no? And by the way, she's Jewish, so think about that, you know? So anyway, well, she doesn't consider herself as Jewish, but anyway, you know, if you want to add up some, you know, if you want to thicker plot, you know.
David, so the hand next, yeah.
Yes, I was struck by your slide that compared the investment in the militarization and then the investment in the justice system.
Yes.
Well, but it's not just Morena. It looked like it's been since.
Yes, absolutely.
And everyone.
It started with Calderón, went on with Peña Nieto, and it's with López Obrador.
So what would it take to build a consensus to increase investment in the justice system, in the prosecutors and others?
Listen, that is the question. That is the question. Why they don't do that, no? And it seems that, I mean, politicians, they are looking at the short term, no? They are always concerned about the next election. So in order to build these institutions, especially a good prosecution, a good district attorney office, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money. And you know this here in the States, no? So it's not good politics, I would say, to say, you know how we're going to solve this? I'm going to invest in a district attorney office. The press is going to go after you, and what do you mean? What, you're going to bring lawyers and, you know, and scientific police and all of that? But that's the real solution. I don't have any doubt whatsoever. But politicians, they don't think like that, and it's terrible. I mean, but we have to keep pushing the government that the real solution, as I said, is not only the police, but the prosecution and the judges. By the way, also you have to invest in judges, and you tell people we are going to invest in judges in Mexico. No, a judge is a synonym of corruption. No, so and then we are going to build better prisons. No, better jails. No, well, but that's the challenge precisely. Yeah.
Yes, Leo, I have the conversation yesterday with Macario Schettino.
Yes, my friend.
Okay. He is of the idea that a fiscal crisis is not avoidable, is something going to happen next year or before the end of the 6-year period. What do you think about it?
No, I have that difference with my friend Macario. He thinks that we're going to have a fiscal crisis before the election in 24. I don't think so. There has been, López Obrador has been very responsible, I would say, in terms of fiscal policy. And of course, Mexico has a very low ratio of debt to GDP. We're talking, I think, 52%. So, well, here in the States it's more than 100, but you can afford that because you have the dollar, no? But many Europeans or other Latin American countries, they have higher percentage of debt to the GDP. They can go out to the markets and get more debt for financing what they need for the next 2 years. No? It's not a good time to go to the markets and ask for money because of the interest rates, but I think they have room for maneuvering in the fiscal policy.
Right here, yeah. Here, let's take your question and then together those two and then those two and then we'll finish. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because of the drug problems at the border, would it be helpful for the new president, if it's the woman, to invite the U.S. military to come in 100 miles into Mexico to seal across the country to stop the drugs?
Okay, that's the drugs, and then let me just take that question as well.
You mentioned that in your involvement, you mentioned Pemex, that there were military involvement there.
Yes.
40 years ago, I was the Getty Oil Company's chemicals manager, and the contingent from Getty went down, met with Serrano and Pemex
Yes.
in Mexico City. And at that time, there was no a present military environment in the energy area that I was aware of.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, what is the situation now? Because that whole relationship was one that was fraught with collaboration, if you will, and absolutely no involvement of the military.
Yes. Let me first answer your questions, and sorry to tell you this, sir, but you are never going to stop the traffic of drugs. When you have demand, there is always supply. So if you can bring the whole U.S. military to Mexico with nuclear bombs and everything, and they're going to go they're going to come from Canada or from, I don't know, no? Or from the sea or when there is demand, there is always supply. This idea that you can control the traffic of drugs, I think it's not a good one. No, it's not true that you can control the traffic of drugs. I don't think you can control the problem of drugs with the police. You have to control that with public health and with education and all of that. But I don't want to get into that. I know it's a very controversial issue, but even if you bring really the best militaries of the world and you say we are going to stop the trafficking, that is not going to happen, no? And by the way, in 1915, the U.S. militaries came to Chihuahua. It was to Chihuahua, right, to find Pancho Villa. Yeah. Never found him. Pershing went there. Patton was, by the way, in the troops. No, never found him. No, I mean, so these drug dealers, they know where to hide and they know how to operate. It's an incredible operation, by the way. No, I mean, El Chapo Guzman had 262 distribution centers all over America. Not even Walmart has that kind of distribution. No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a very good business and they know how to operate. No, I'm not joking. I mean, it's really incredible. So the problem is that, I mean, that to think that we can fight and we can stop the drug traffickers, I don't think it's the correct idea. No, so that's my point of view. And for your answer, yes, I mean, the militaries were never involved with Pemex and the oil. They were just guarding the refineries. There are 6 refineries in Mexico, but they were not involved. But now they are involved. They are involved all over. No, I mean, there are, you know, now the jokes in Mexico is when you are going to see that maybe, for example, you know that the World Cup is approaching, the soccer World Cup, no? That maybe we should bring a military team to the soccer team to the, no? I mean, it's even a joke because the militaries are all over the country right now. They are getting involved, and that's my concern. And to be honest, I know the Mexican militaries were not good. And that's exactly the design of the political system, not to have a strong military, no? Because we needed a very weak military. That was good for the country, no? Can I have an anecdote for
Sure.
1 minute anecdote? I mean, once the president called the CEO of Pemex, the general director, and said, listen, I got a call from General something, who was the Ministry of Defense, and he said he's very upset because you are only giving them gasoline for 1 week, no? And he's very upset about that. I mean, he wants more gasoline than for 1 week. And the CEO of Pemex, the general director, said, Mr. President, do you really want to give the military 1 more week, more than 1 week of gasoline? And he kept silent and he said, well, I think we can give the general just 1 week. You know, it's good that he just have 1 week of gasoline. No, yeah, exactly. It's good. 1 week is okay. No? That's part of the logic of the Mexican political system, to keep the military at bay.
Last question. Yes.
Muy bienvenido.
Gracias.
Leo Zuckermann.
Gracias.
And Director, I want to thank you for the wonderful work you've done here. I've attended many meetings here. It's wonderful. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I love Mexico. This Virgen is from the Catedral. I carry with me. I'm a Guadalupano. I've worked in Mexico. I've worked in Tijuana. I love Mexico. And I'd like to end this question on an upbeat note. Mexico is a rich country filled with wonderful resources. The demographics are wonderful.
Yes.
Hardworking people, educated kids. I've worked in Tijuana for many years and just seen it boom. Would you please speak to the future of Mexico based upon the resources, the hardworking, conservative people, middle class? I'd like to see a bright future, and I think there's going to be a bright future for Mexico. Ojalá. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And
Let me-
I
let
agree
me,
with you.
Leo, if you don't mind, let me just gather that, and then we can close, because we gotta go. We gotta treat our guests to lunch. Yeah.
Okay, just one comment and one question. I think I don't want to see Mexico as Venezuela. Venezuela started the same way. Military. Now they have the National Guard, and now they, from Chavez and Maduro, what they did, they break the parties. It's exactly the same. All
Yeah.
the militaries, they take that. Also, they create an airline. By the way, they bankrupt 9 times the airlines. If Mexico create an airline, for example, very quick, is free gas and everything for them, it's not going to be
No competition.
no competition. Now, my question for you, what do you hear, what do you know really about Papagayo? The 6 terabytes they steal from Mexican Department.
Guacamaya.
It's a bird, yeah, no worries. They fly beautiful boat.
Yeah.
What do you hear? What do you know? 6 terabytes. And AMLO, it really is, nothing happened. What is your opinion about this?
All right, we close with those 2 questions.
No, I mean, also, what you are saying is that last week, we found that a group, Guacamaya, hacked the entire email. The entire, it was just the emails of the Ministry of Finance, of the Sedena. It's 6 terabytes of information. It's a major scandal, of course. No, they hacked the army, and what is going to happen is that we're going to have several scandals as journalists start to dig up in the. It's a huge database. So, as my colleagues in the media are digging, are using. Artificial intelligence and all of those kinds of methods to it's a general again, so to try to find out all these important pieces of information from the army, and there are going to be major scandals. I don't have any doubt about that. Now, the other thing, which is a scandal, is that President López Obrador minimized this and said, I'm not going to to find out what happened, and there are not going to be any kind of punishment of consequences for that hacking. I think this is the most irresponsible answer of the commander-in-chief. It's incredible because someone failed. For me, this is really a process where you can see that the army failed to protect their own data. And how in the world they are going to protect us if they cannot protect their own data? Can you imagine that? So let me tell you, in Chile, it was the same. Guacamayas hacked also the army, and one general resigned. The president asked for an investigation, they got involved the Congress for finding what happened with how they were hacked. No, here in Mexico, nothing happened. And if nothing happens, is the best solution for happening again. No, it's going to happen again if there are no consequences. So, of course, this is part of the debate that we are having in Mexico. When you have all this militarization, no, the militaries are hacked by these guacamayas. No, by the way, how do you translate guacamaya?
That's a good question. It might be the same word. Who knows?
Guacamaya. No.
A positive note, and we close, and then I have, before I give you the last word for a positive note, is a response to our last guest. On November 14th, Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas will be here.
Oh, nice.
And my question for him is going to be, where's Mexico's left? Where is the left? The democratic left.
Ask him about the militarization. I mean, that would be interesting because Cuauhtémoc is the son of Lázaro,
right?
And Lázaro was a general.
Yeah.
No.
So keep an eye for the invitation on November 14th. He'll be here with us, and right here we'll have a good conversation. Last word. Good positive note.
I loved what you said. I love Mexico. Mexico saved my family, from the Holocaust, and I love my country, and I think it's a great country, and I am very concerned about Mexican democracy. I am optimistic about the economy. I am optimistic about several things, but I am very, very concerned about what's going to happen with our very young democracy that we have. No. And many people think that America is going to help us, in this regard. I don't think that America is going to help us with the political system. And that is good because we have to fix our own problems. And I am, all in all, I think, and I talk, Tony, you are also very optimistic because you see a very alive society, no? And I agree with you. By the way, now Mexico City is full of Americans, that are living there. They are very happy. They pay half of what they pay here, no? And
they're working remotely, yeah.
And they have more fun, by the way. So yeah, exactly. So when I see in my neighborhood that there are many, many Americans walking in the streets, and I say, listen, something good we have done, no? I mean, Tijuana is incredible. I have been traveling to Tijuana for several years. I have seen the different, but all, I mean, Monterrey, tell me about Monterrey, no? And Guadalajara, and no, it's a great country. I agree with you. And I told you, no, in the first session, we have to talk good about Mexico. We have to be the first propagandists of Mexico, no?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and thank you, Leo, for accompanying us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.